Okay, so we're trying to think of, now that we know the barriers and the listening process, how do we know how to overcome these barriers? And the book talks about simple things that you can do. When we cross the street, what do they tell us to do? Look both ways, stop, look, and then cross, right? Well, in communication, it's kind of the same thing. But what we're saying is stop, look, and then listen. When we say stop, what we're meaning is you've got to turn off all of the competing messages that are vying for your attention. Okay? If the phone, you know that you have your phone with you, what might you do to stop? Turn it off. Put it on vibrate. Leave it in your car. Right? A lot of different things so that you're not distracted from it. We also talk about social decentering. That means a lot of times we think the world is ours and people are just actors in our life, right? Sometimes it's not all about us. Sometimes it's about other people too. So we have to stop thinking about ourselves as the most important thing and look at what somebody else is trying to say. What are they trying to get across to us? And that's called social decentering. Sometimes I even have a hard time about doing this because it's what I want, when I want it, and how I want it. And regardless of what anybody says. But if you want to be a good listener, it can't always be your way. Your way, as much as it pains me to say it, is not always the right way. Okay? Sometimes you got to listen to somebody else's way. So these are some things you can do. Prepare yourself physically. Bring the materials, like in class. If you want to listen, make sure you bring appropriate materials, like your book, or your notes, or things to write on, right? So that you'll know if there's something important to say, I can write it down, or I can highlight it. I see some of you highlighting your outline. So that's good because you're physically ready to listen to the message. Also, set the scene for attentive listening. So, make sure you're sitting up straight. Make sure that you're facing the person that's probably going to be communicating with you. All of you are all facing this way. So that tells you, or that's getting you ready to physically listen to the message. And then, especially in business, you want to arrive early to the meetings because a lot of announcements go on at the very beginning. And you don't want to miss out on those things because they're probably not going to be repeated later. So the earlier you arrive, the more you're ready to prepare yourself to get things going. Look is the next step. When we look, we're not just looking with our eyes, we're paying attention with all of our senses. Okay? And we're trying to decode and take in information through all of our senses, which is hearing, seeing, tasting, touching, and feeling? No, that was touching. What was the other one? Smelling. That's it. Okay? So be in tune. Use your senses to look with whatever it is you're talking about. Now, this says listen with your eyes. So look for those nonverbal behaviors. But, nonverbal can also be space, right? Remember? It can be time. It can be touch. All of those are nonverbal things. So we don't just look with our eyes, but we look with all of our senses. And then, again, look for liking cues. We call those immediacy cues. Remember we talked about that? It says look for interest cues that people want to talk to you. Or if they don't want to talk to you, pay attention to that too, and maybe you just need to either sum it up and move on, or don't even bother with that person if they don't want to talk to you. And then the last one is look for status cues, and status shows what? Shows that you're who? If you have status, you're important, right? Status shows importance. So you've got to look for those status cues in people to know what is important and not important. A lot of times, when the boss of a company comes up, that's when people start to pay attention. Okay? So is it just somebody that you're communicating with that's your coworker, or is it your boss? So that way you know to look and pay attention and focus on that message more clear, or maybe it's just a regular conversation. So you've got to pay attention to those things. And then the last one is to listen. It says understand all of the communication aspects that goes into practice when we're trying to talk with somebody. So listen for the major ideas. So in general, what are they trying to say? What is the overall message? You got to look for the minor details. So what are the details that support that major message? And then listen actively by, again, engaging in those attentive behaviors. Ask questions. Be good at being responsive. Okay, if you're not sure about what something is, like I said, ask questions to get it repeated or say it a different way. Use different examples. The book talks about how do we understand things. Are we whole part learners or part whole learners? The best example I can give is, some people tell you, you missed the forest for the trees. That means you're so busy looking at the trees and all their little details that you forget that there's a whole forest that's taking place. And some people are the opposite, that they're so busy captivated by the forest, they forget to look at the intricacies of the trees. So the details are the trees, and the forest is the whole thing of what you're trying to look at. You've got to know what kind of learner you are, and the book has a quiz for that so that you can really see where your strengths and your weaknesses lie. Now, when I talk about today's lecture, if you're a whole part learner, what is it that you're going to pay attention to? Everything that has to deal with what? Listening, chapter 4. So everything that you're hearing, the details, you know in your mind, you can fit it into chapter 4. Now, if you're a part whole learner, you're going to look at the barriers individually. You're going to look at stop, look, and listen individually. You're going to look at the listening process. And then you're going to say, okay, all of those now fit together in chapter 4. So you've got to figure out what kind of learner you are and how best that it is that you learn. Okay? That was the survey. Okay? Now, types of listening styles. Depending on who you are, just like your social style, well, you've got a listening style here. You've got active, involved, passive, and detached. Okay? You can read these definitions. In general, looking back at the social styles. Okay? If you're expressive, what type of listener will you tend to be?
Active.
Active, right? Because you're going to give full attention to others, right? And then other people are going to give, hopefully, attention to you. So you're an active listener, okay? Can you be amiable and be an active listener? Yes, because amiable, again, we're high on responsiveness, remember? So they can also be active listeners. Now, involved listeners. Who is that? You think the analyticals are involved listeners? Remember what the analytical were? They were low, right? Low on responsiveness and low on attentiveness. Or assertiveness, excuse me. So they're not going to be involved in conversations. They're going to want to do things themselves. Okay? So they might not even go to the meetings and really be involved in those conversations. They're just going to kind of avoid it altogether, possibly. What about the passive listeners? They choose not to be equal participant. Who might fall into those? Analytical also, again, okay? Where do the drivers fit? Where do the drivers fit?
Wherever they want.
Wherever they want. I like that you said that, right? Because guess what? If they like the topic, they're going to be involved. They're going to be active. But if they don't like the topic, or it's not going their way, what are they going to do? They're going to start arguing, or they're going to go away, or they're going to not be involved at all. It's going to be hard to get them to pay attention. So I think with the drivers, it really depends on what the topic is to see what kind of listener that they are, because they're kind of the extreme. If everything's going nice and going their way and everything's on their time and what they like to do, they're going to be at their best. And if it's not, they're going to be at their worst. Okay? So those are the kind of listeners that you can possibly be. And again, just like your social style, you don't have to be just one. The more your social style flex, well, guess what? I mean, I don't think you could. There's not technically a listener flexing, but you could be able to use your listening skills at different points in time.